Christina Crook is a journalist and communications professional whose writing has appeared in a plethora of publications. She was overwhelmed, like many of us, by her technologically driven life, so she turned off her online connection for 31 days and experienced the amazing peace and freedom of face-to-face connection. She digs deeply into the pluses and minuses of being constantly connected in her book, The Joy of Missing Out. Christina, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you wrote this book, The Joy of Missing Out. What inspired the book? Was it your 31 days being unconnected?
Yes, so I decided to take 31 days completely off the internet. So I wanted to step away and put my life in focus, to turn off all the pressure basically of my email box, my social media feeds, and just figure out what kind of person and also what kind of parent, I've got 3 young kids, I would be when I stepped away. Not everyone, I'm not advocating that everyone do 31 days, but for me, stepping away for that period of time really helped bring things into focus.
And that's why you wanted to write the book, to kind of share about what you learned during that journey.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you know, I was amazed when I saw your book. I did a little research, and I had no idea that this whole idea of the joy of missing out, or they call it JOMO,
Yep.
is actually a worldwide discussion that's going on, where people are actually counting the things that they're not doing. They're celebrating all the events that they're not at, because that represents a choice to do something more important. So tell me about that concept.
Yeah, so JOMO is a play on FOMO, the fear of missing out. So it's a play on that, you know, when we step away, it's not, you know, we don't need to be fearful of the things we're missing out on online. We can step into the joy of the things we are missing out on. So the banal updates that we're getting constantly through social media, you know, it can be fun for a while, but once you're 2 hours into reading, you know, like today I cooked Thai chicken for dinner, you know, let's get our heads sort of above this chatter. And so, yeah, so the joy of missing out, it is a worldwide idea that is gaining more and more traction, because I think people are having a hard time figuring out what kind of balance to strike in terms of how much time to spend online and how much time to be connected face to face.
And you mentioned social media, and I think it is the worst for FOMO, for the fear of missing out. You know, it's like you see one of your friends is at an event that you weren't invited to, or this person is having a fabulous life while you're really struggling, or they look beautiful while you don't, or whatever those comparisons are, right? That it's kind of like everyone's only posting the great things about themselves in their life, and you believe it somehow, that actually everyone is living a great life but you.
It's true. And you know, the internet has a way of making even the most normal things look really glossy and fabulous. So
Yes.
even, I find sometimes even if I post really honest things about how life isn't going well, people say it still sounds really nice because you have like a nice way of writing it, because I'm a writer. It's so ridiculous. You know, we have an idea of how people's lives are going, and real life paints the real picture. You know, online we only see little strokes, only little pieces of what life really looks like. Case in point, my brother in Whistler and his wife recently posted a fabulous picture of them out on a night on the town. And I thought, life must be going really well. And then I had a chat with my mom yesterday, and they were robbed last week of almost everything. Their eldest kid is struggling in school, right? I would only know that if I actually picked up the phone and called them. So, you know, we have a picture that the internet paints, and we paint in our own minds, but real life is really what brings things into focus.
And we need to know that, because I had a friend, she was going through the worst year of her life, a divorce. But, she, you know, obviously Facebook, and if you have a lot of people on there that you don't know that well, it's not really the appropriate place to talk about the more personal issues of your life. Yeah. So you just always saw her living this fabulous life, going out to eat, meeting this, you know, really important person. And I remember watching her Facebook thinking she's going through the worst year of her life, and you would never know it by Facebook. And somehow we have to get that message across, especially to younger people who may not have that same perspective.
Yeah. There is an idea that the Greeks had that God is the really real. That's what they translated God into. And I think as humans, and also specifically as Christians, that we need to be completely real about what's really going on in our lives. And that's tricky online, because you can only, it's all, you know, it's all about what you choose to share and what you don't choose to share. But I think the more and more honest we can be about those things, the better we will all be.
Yeah, absolutely, taking people on that journey. One of the stats you said in your book that totally blew me away was that there are more pieces of digital content in the world than there are sands on every single beach in the world.
That blew me away too when I found that out. It was sometime in 2012 that there were more pieces of information on the internet than there were grains of sand. And you know, we often think about only God knows, you know, the number of hairs on our head. Only God knows how many grains of sand there are on the earth. And now all of a sudden Google and the internet have swallowed that up. And I think that's something to pay attention to. You know, there is our attention is constantly being drawn into a particular technology, but God is also trying to get our attention. And when we put those things sort of into context, specifically the grains of sand thing, I think it kind of all of a sudden makes you go, aha, you know, what's happening here?
And that's kind of why you wanted to write the book, in a sense, because we're being assaulted literally by all this distraction and information. And how is that really affecting our face-to-face relationships? How is that affecting our spiritual life and our time with God and our time with our kids, you know, and the things that matter? How do you find that balance?
For me, and taking 31 days away really put the internet into perspective in terms of viewing it as a tool. You know, it is a tool to help us connect with other people often far away. It's a tool to help us access information. And for me, ultimately, if I view the internet as a tool, it really gives me a lot of perspective. So I actually write a to-do list of the things I need to do online on a piece of paper before I open my MacBook. You know, and I try and get those things done as quickly as possible and then, you know, move on to other things. Another big key for me, especially as a Christian, is living in light of our design. We are physical beings. You know, we learn in high school biology that most of our communication happens face to face. You know, it's me using my hands, it's you and I connecting eye to eye. And from infancy, babies seek out the eyes of other human beings. You know, we're physical beings and we need to pay attention to that. And when most of our communication is happening by text, we're missing out on the majority of communication. And that's very limiting and definitely impacts how we relate to other people.
And you mentioned a study that if adolescents spend most of their time in communicating to people by texting, they're actually not learning that skill of being able to read faces and empathize. So they're actually missing on a social skill, is what the concern is.
Absolutely, they are. And that does have major ramifications for empathy. And we see that in bullying in high schools. We see that in kids not being able to have proper conversations with not only each other but with adults, and that has ramifications for intimacy, it has ramifications for marriage, it has ramifications for when they're future parents, you know, and they're going to be teachers and leaders as well. So I believe as parents, I'm a parent, you know, that I have to be modeling for my kids what I want to see them acting out in their lives as well.
Absolutely. And you mentioned in the book that we are the last generation of parents. I'm not a parent, but we're the last generation of people who know what it's like not to have a computer in your pocket that goes with you everywhere. So we have a perspective to bring and to teach in that way, but we ourselves have to kind of lick this thing first, right?
It's true. And that's the tricky thing. You know, as parents in this age, we are learning how to adopt and how to create balance in our lives along with our children. So the kids are kind of along for the ride in this smartphone adoption season that we are in, and so that is a bit tricky, you know, because most people have been really caught up in, you know, the glossiness and the fun, and there's a new app literally every second being posted on the App Store, and then how do we create the balance and say no to certain things for not only ourselves but for our children. But I think that there is a lot of life when we step away, and my book, The Joy of Missing Out, is really about finding the things that are life-giving for us and honing our lives more and more towards those things. And as parents, I think we can do the same thing for our children, finding those things that they love, encouraging them to get out to do those things, and they won't want to spend as much time in front of the screen when they're doing the things they truly love.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about your book is that you didn't, you know, say like it's a bad thing. Smartphones are not bad, the internet is not bad, but it's how we use it that makes it good or bad. And, you know, as technology develops, and there'll be new things that will be there, maybe on a watch, you know, we don't know what the future holds, but what are the kinds of questions we need to ask ourselves as we look at new technologies? And, you know, we don't want to be behind the times and not adopt everything, but how do we adopt it wisely?
For me, it comes down to asking the right questions, you know, before you adopt a new technology. And some of this for me comes from the Amish, which people probably red flag that, like, the Amish, they're not, you know, they've got nothing going on over there. But actually, the executive editor of Wired magazine, you know, the world's, you know, technology magazine, he actually finds the way the Amish adopt instructive, because they don't say no to technology, they just adopt it very slowly. So the Amish actually watch us. They watch us adopt, and they see what works and what doesn't work. And so I think I just want to note that for a moment. So for me, it comes down to asking the right questions. Where is this energy going to come from? Okay, so I'm considering adopting Instagram because apparently Facebook is on its way out. So if I'm going to adopt Instagram, where is that time going to come from? Where is the energy and creativity going to come from? What is that going to shift in my life? And I think when we start asking those questions before we just leap on the next bandwagon, it helps us in terms of creating more balance.
Yeah, because I think what we've done is we've adopted and embraced everything, and then we've kind of gone, wow, there's a few downsides to this. You know, people in my life are feeling ignored or all of that. And you suggested suggest actually doing a media fast, which I used to do that 1 day a week, a whole day, no email, not even any music, no TV, nothing. And that was hard. Actually, it's hard. I have to be honest. It's hard. But I remember finishing those days feeling so at peace in my spirit, because you feel kind of like pulled in 100 different directions all the time. You're checking your email, this, that, you know, text, phone. There is a piece to it. And do you practice that?
I do. And I haven't, we were talking earlier, and because I'm promoting my book, I'm caught up in the email box and the social media feeds a lot right now,
So
which is
your
this
book
great
did the
irony.
opposite of what
I
you
know.
wanted.
Unfortunately for this season, and there will be seasons. There are seasons that demand more of us online, and then, you know, we create a balance again. But it was actually National Day of Unplugging on Friday, and it was 6 o'clock, and you're supposed to start at sundown, and the sun was going down, and I was going, oh, I'm not sure if I could do this. But then eventually I put it down, and I had a 24-hour period where my whole family, we didn't have any screens, and it was a really life-giving day, and I did feel way quieter in my head, you know. When I stepped away for 31 days, that was one of the biggest things I experienced, was a quietness of mind. And I'm a writer, and I'm also a mom with 3 little kids, and it's very demanding emotionally and mentally. So if I'm filling all of those other little windows I have with smartphone check-ins and filling it with chatter, it actually creates a lot of stress in my life. And so stepping away, I really advocate for this sort of, people call it a tech Sabbath, like what you were describing, 24 hours to step away weekly, where we gain some perspective. And that's just a Christian idea of honoring the Sabbath, putting things in perspective. So I really advocate for that.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming to share. I think, you know, you present a measured and a balanced approach, which I think is so important. There's the good and the bad and the ugly, and we have to learn how to manage all of it. And as you said, it's different in different seasons. But I think stepping away and really investing in people, that face-to-face connection is not only good for them, but it's good for us. It's what we need. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you here for this conversation.
Thanks for having me.